joining live today. We're definitely a small group, so feel free to jump in and ask any questions that you might have. This training will be recorded and will be available on our Leaders Edge YouTube channel. The purpose of these trainings, and I think they are especially helpful on recording, it's to get the agent who really wants to understand the different components of kvCore sort of on board with managing a CRM at some level. Whether it's just a basic place to organize your people or something more advanced with campaign automation and leveraging some of the really cool tech tools that are embedded in kvCore, we're going to address a lot of that. But we're starting sort of at the beginner's level with these 12 o'clock trainings. Just to refresh your memory, some of the things that we've already done, we talked about how to activate your account, setting up your profile, building in things like your bio, your social media links. Last week, we even spent some time talking about how you might personalize your website. Very easy things that you could do that could help you tie your personal brand into what's happening in kvCore and your public-facing website. Today, what we're going to talk about is really at the heart of kvCore, how to get started with your database. There are a couple of action items that are going to come out of today that are very much like you'll know what to do. You'll have your homework and where to start. I want to take a little bit of time to show how to navigate the database portion of kvCore so you can maneuver your way around, find your way from the dashboard to your database and how to get into individual database records, to view them, to understand them, and to manage them. And we're also going to spend some time talking about how to build out your people. Like if you're starting from scratch and don't even have a single client loaded into kvCore, I'm going to help you get started and give you sort of a launching point to get some names together and get them into your kvCore database. Okay, so let's get started. I want to first take a look at kvCore. And if you are joining live, I hope that you're seeing my kvCore dashboard. If you are able to stick a thumbs up in the chat or just give me some message, that'd be great. But you should be looking at my dashboard once I log into kvCore. We've talked about where you go to find things like your profile. Now, today we're going to spend our time in this, 45 minutes or so, really diving into the smart CRM. This is where you're going to find all of your contacts and manage your database. Okay. If I go there now, when you're in Smart CRM, it's going to load all of your names, all of your people. Keep in mind that I have a team platform, so sometimes it takes a little bit longer for my lists to load. And if you see something like private lead, again, that just relates to the fact that I have a team platform. And in that platform, the agent on the team has the ability to keep their personal leads private. So that's exactly what that is a team member keeping their personal leads private. When you're here at the database screen, you have the ability to enter some filters that if you want to only see certain people in your database, if you only want to see, say, buyers or sellers, or if you only want to see clients with a certain hashtag, and put a pin in that. We're going to talk about hashtag in a minute. You have the ability from this filters tab to make those selections. So when you click on it, it's going to open up a whole host of options for you to narrow down the list that you're viewing. Let's say, for example, that I just wanted to send a quick update to everybody who was a client or active, or maybe I wanted to send a message to everybody whose current status is a buyer, who's listed as a buyer in my database. Maybe I wanted to notify them that rates dropped, and that it might be a good time to reevaluate their position in the market. You can use the filters to narrow down your database to just those requested people. So let's say, for example, in contact details, I only wanted to identify buyers, and then I could scroll down and simply click on the Apply Filters button. Once my database has identified just the people that are listed as buyer, I can move forward to send a mass text or even a mass email right from this screen, right from here. This is not getting into the campaigns, which are more automated. A mass email or a mass text is still going to be a manual thing that you're doing in the moment, sort of on the fly, a one-time email or a one-time text. But it can be very beneficial, like I said, if you have a specific purpose in that moment, giving them a rate update. Maybe you want to send a message to all of your clients, just wishing them a happy Thanksgiving or, a blessed holiday, for example. You can do those things from here at the CRM screen. You don't have to go into each individual person. So it gives you a tremendous amount of efficiency in executing on that one message. One of the things that I recommend that you do when you're looking at this screen, I think it defaults, like the first time that you're looking at your database, it might default to say 50 rows at a time. I encourage you to go the max so that you can see 250 rows at a time. The reason being is that if you do want to send a mass email or a mass text, if you click here at the top of the page to select all of those people that met your filter criteria, it will only select the people on the first page. So if you have 200 people that you want to message, email, or text, and you are only showing 50 people at a time, then when you go to click on that box at the top of the page, it's only going to select the first 50 to receive your message. Then you'd have to click on to page 2 and repeat the process. And the way to eliminate that is by simply expanding to show 250 rows at a time. That way, all 200 of your people will be visible at once, and you only have to execute on the item one time. If you wanted to say, send a mass email, it's really pretty simple. You would just click on mass email, and it's going to bring up an editor box. A couple of things that you'll notice, which we're going to address as I talk through building your database and how to be effective in that in kvCore. When the email box comes up, you'll notice that kvCore is telling me that of the people that I've selected, 34 are unsubscribed. So here I am thinking in this case that I might be reaching 85 buyers, when in all reality, 34 of them are unsubscribed and will not get the email. We'll talk about how to address that or fix that, both broadly when you're setting up your database, and then also sort of on a one-off basis, how to correct that person by person if you need to make a change. It is important, just as sort of a side note, that if somebody does unsubscribe from your email distribution, you do have to honor that request. You can't sort of resubscribe them randomly without them requesting it or indicating that they want to get back on your mailing list. The other thing, so you have 21 people that have an invalid email address. So again, that goes to the quality of the information that's being entered. That's something that can be fixed or managed, and I'll show you that. When you come to this point, you can either pull from a template, which is something that we'll really cover a little bit more when we do some of our other sessions on campaigns, on newsletters, but you can also, right from here, create your email message, and you would do that right here in this editor box. You have the ability to add links. So if you had a web link, you have the ability to copy and paste. If you want to use a graphic or a photo, you can do that. You can select the font. So there's, it's not a super fancy word processing capability, but it does the job to be able to get, the most important thing is that you're getting that message out in front of your clients. Once you enter your message and you're happy with it, you can go ahead and hit send at the bottom, and it will send that message to all of those people that you've identified, barring the people that are having either unsubscribed issues or faulty email issues. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you create a subject for your email, pick something catchy and unique that will grab the attention of the recipient and hopefully help you avoid being in their spam or be readily identified as not spam if you should end up there initially. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel here. And it'll prompt me to make sure, because it'll lose, if I make any edits and then have to hold off, I forgot to do something, it won't save it as a draft right from here. You have to do that in the campaign section, which is beyond what we're addressing today. But the important thing is that you know that you can quickly get that message out. So even if you don't want to sort of get to the next layer of the onion with kvCore, this is a great feature. Same thing with mass text. You can do the same thing there. You also have the ability within kvCore to create a video message or do a voicemail drop. And you can do that in bulk to multiple recipients. And a lot of that you can do right here from all of these buttons at the top of your database. Okay. Now, what I want to do is spend a little bit of time talking about what a specific client profile looks like in kvCore, just to help you navigate that a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and search Deanna. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm a huge proponent of you creating a dummy client in your kvCore account so that you can receive messages, so that you can test certain functionality to make sure that you're happy with the consumer or the client experience and that it meets your sort of expectations when you're setting it up. Okay, so let me just remove my filter. The first thing I have to do is clear my filters. And then when I go ahead and search Deanna, now here's all my, and it's also good to know how many Deannas there are in the world, not just me. But so let's take one that I have, this profile that I created. When I click on it from that database list, now it's going to bring up a profile that's only about the client that I'm looking at. Okay, so I will see everything that I know about this client here on this client dashboard. Let's start with the timeline. It's going to go through, we have 6 different tabs here. I don't use all the tabs. In fact, I only use 3 of the 6. You may decide that you want to use more, but certainly let's at least cover the biggest nuts and bolts of what you can see and do within one client's profile. You're always going to have on the left-hand side, excuse me, the name of your client, the name of the database contact, and you can edit the information for phone, email, and mailing address. Okay. The way that you would edit it is simply by clicking on this little pencil, and it gives you the opportunity to add or edit these items. Then you can save or cancel. Notice the little pencil follows each of these 3 fields too. The next section below their pertinent contact information is the classification of this person, this contact. Notice you have 5 options, and they're limited to these 5 options: buyer, seller, renter, vendor, and agent. You do have the ability to select more than one. So if at different times, excuse me, you've been with a buyer, someone has been a buyer, but then they've also been a seller, or maybe in the same moment they're selling and buying with you, you always have the ability to click on more than one. You'll notice here, if I went and clicked on all of them, they're all turning green, and the system is also giving me that sweet little notification that it's been updated. I can just as easily uncheck. So if a certain classification no longer applies, I can simply remove it. And again, I'm going to get that same notification. Hashtags. This is a great time to talk about hashtags, especially because most times when you hear that word, everybody's thought is social media and how hashtags work in social media. So that if you were, on Instagram or on Facebook, and you wanted to search everything that was tagged Philadelphia Eagles or New York Giants or whatever you're interested in, maybe a certain real estate platform or lead or process, or maybe you wanted to, whatever the case may be, whatever you're searching, maybe you wanted to find things about Aruba or traveling abroad, and you would use the hashtag to try and find all of the content that had been posted all across that web platform related to and associated with that particular subject. Hashtags in kvCore are not that way. Hashtags are not public. They do not help people find you. They are simply an internal way for you to manage your database and group people together in sort of rational buckets, if you will. There's no limit to the number of hashtags you can assign to one individual contact. So the sky's sort of the limit. It's up to you how creative you want to be. So let's talk about that more in depth for a second. Let me just pull up a slide to help sort of get your juices flowing. So there are 3 different categories as we talk through one specific lead. And hopefully, like I said, if you can't see these things on my screen, on your screen, let me know. We already talked about the lead type, the classification, whether it's buyer, seller, renter, agent, or vendor. Remember, you can select one, none, or all five of these. It's totally up to you, but you're limited to these categories. When it comes to hashtags, you're going to create the hashtag. And like I said, there's no limit. The important thing that I emphasize when you are setting up your database is to be thoughtful in the system that you create and then be consistent in how you apply it. So what do I mean by that? Here are some ideas of how you might categorize client. Okay. Maybe one client could be a member of my family. So I might hashtag them family. They might also be a past seller. So I might hashtag them past seller. Maybe I also like to track birthdays. So I might give them a hashtag that's the month specific to their birthday month. So I might have hashtags October birthday, November birthday. Maybe I have people that I've met at the gym or in church or in PTA, or maybe that are associated with a softball league that I play in. You can create hashtags around all of those things. And the value for that is that you can reach different clients at different times with different messages. So maybe at the end of the year, I want to send a very special message to the clients that I worked with this past year. So maybe every client that I close a deal with in 2023, I would give them a hashtag of 2023 close or 2023 client, in addition to past seller, past buyer, and any other, maybe they're also a church person, maybe they're also a friend. Because at the end of the year, I might need the hashtag 2023 client to send them that special thank you email or text. But then maybe I also want to make sure that I know that they are someone that I know from the gym, because maybe once a month we, organize some sort of networking event for everybody that met at the gym. And you want to send a communication to all of those people that's different from what you did to send your thank you message at the end of the year. So it's up to you what those buckets look like. And you can always grow and build those buckets and classifications over time. The most important thing that I emphasize is when you're at the starting point, when you're just now saying, okay, I need to build my database and I need to organize my people, be consistent. So if you're using 2023 client, when 2024 rolls over, use 2024 client. Don't forget that hashtag and then start doing, maybe some people you call 2024 client, but then somebody else you call client 2024. I'm just going to mute. It makes it harder for people to leverage that hashtag system when you forget how you were working your labels. Okay. Same thing with, using, say, past seller versus previous seller versus just seller. You want to be consistent. So what I always like to tell people is, even if you create a note in your phone and keep a list, like a legend, all the hashtags that you use, so that when you need that hashtag again, you remember how you labeled something. It's a lot like a map. If you open up a map and you're looking at it and you've never looked at a map before, you need to find the legend to understand what each symbol or unique icon on the map means. Same idea. If you keep a legend of all the hashtags that you use, it'll make a whole lot more sense to you, and it'll help you really stay consistent as you grow out your database. Do you understand hashtags generally speaking? Because sometimes that's just when everybody's used to the hashtag concept in social media, it's just a little bit foreign to understand it differently in kvCore. A couple of sort of housekeeping things about hashtags. When you're entering them in a spreadsheet, and we'll talk about that. If you want to upload a sort of a mass list of contacts to give your database a jump start, or maybe you're on maintenance, and so once a quarter, once a month, once a year, you're adding new people. I hope not once a year, at least once a quarter. But as you're adding new people, you don't want to use spaces with any of your hashtags. And if you are using a template like a spreadsheet, you want to separate those hashtags with something called a pipe. The pipe is the symbol that's right above the enter key. If you use Shift and that key on your keyboard, you will get that straight up and down, what's called a pipe. So if I wanted to classify somebody as family and friend, or family and team member, notice team member, no spaces, and I would put them family, pipe, team member, no spaces anywhere in that entry on the spreadsheet. Okay, and I can show you that again when we do one or two samples. The last thing that I'll mention before we go back to kvCore is there's one other item that you have to identify for each entry in your database, and that's their status. Status, you have these set 8 things to choose from, 8 or 9, that you can pick from, but you can only choose one at a time. So a client can't be, or excuse me, a contact can't be a client and in your sphere at the same time, one or the other. Okay, so let's head back to kvCore and let's see how this looks. So here is where I can go ahead and add hashtags. So you'll notice I added 3 here, and anytime I want to add a new one to a person, I can come right here to their individual profile and I can start typing. So maybe I wanted to add the hashtag connection staff. I already have connection team, that's why it's blue, but maybe I wanted to add staff, and notice that it adds it and puts it right here in the list below in all these little gray tiles. If I made a mistake or if I need to remove a hashtag down the road, I can simply cross it out with the little X next to it. It's going to prompt me to be certain, and then it'll remove it. And I want to show you while we're there that it's a couple of cool things that happen in the middle here with the client journey timeline. It's making note on the timeline. It's sort of stamping the moment where I added a hashtag for this client and also removed a hashtag for this client. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The last things that you're going to see on the left-hand side when you're looking at contact in your database, there's some validation that happens. Essentially, validation in layman's terms is where kvCore is looking to take the contact information that you've entered and validate it across other resources around the internet. And a lot of times, because of the digital footprint that people leave, you can get some information even about sometimes the employment information or age of a person. I would never say to count on or 100% rely on validation, but what validation can do is alert you to when you have an absolute trash contact, that if all bad information was given, sometimes you can sort of lean into that and recognize that, hey, somebody registered at your open house or went to your website and performed a property search and gave a fake email and phone number. Contact validation will pull that up. Beyond that, I wouldn't rely very heavily on the results there without doing your own due diligence. Okay, so let's take a look in the middle at this timeline. What I love about the client journey timeline is that you're going to get to see every single thing that happens along that client's journey from the time that the lead or the contact comes into your database, every time an email or text message is sent to them, anytime that they respond to those messages, you will see that here. And then also too, if we set up property alerts for this client, or if they go to your website and search properties, as long as they are registered in your database, you're going to see exactly what properties they're looking at. You'll know how their search criteria might be changing or evolving. You'll be able to see, for example, with this email that was sent back in September, you see that there's a little envelope here and it looks like it's opened. Well, that's because they opened my email, as opposed to this one that was sent in October. That still is a closed envelope. That's because the email was never opened. Okay? Again, this is my sort of test client profile, but great insight here. If you just take the time to look at what's being documented on your client journey. Okay, anytime that you make a change, whether it's updating their contact information, changing their status, updating hashtags, it will all be reflected here. Okay. The other things that you can do on the right-hand side are sort of the action-driven items. So left side is more of how you're going to organize them in your database. Center is really the timeline, keeping track of everything that happens. And then on the right side, this is where we're talking about you taking action and using kvCore as an action resource, not just a place to house information. Okay. If you wanted to send an email to one specific client, you could do that right from their client profile by clicking here to send an email. You can send them a voicemail drop or even shoot a core video and send it to them. Core Present is a whole CMA tool that we're going to talk about in depth on another training class. We're not going to deal with it today, but it's, I think, an awesome CMA tool. I love it. I love the technology. I think it's impressive to your clients. That's something that adds value to your customer experience. You also have the ability to add a note. If you yourself wanted to, maybe you had a conversation with the client on your cell phone, so it didn't document the communication, or maybe you had a text conversation outside of kvCore, again, on your personal cell number, but you wanted to document something here, you can simply do that by adding a note, and then it's going to post that note here in the client journey as a reminder. Then there's a whole host of other things that you can do with more actions. You can transfer a lead. So let's say a lead comes in through an open house and they really are not looking in your area, and you want to be able to transfer that lead to another agent, possibly collect a referral on it. You can transfer the lead itself through kvCore channels and then separately process the referral agreement to make sure that you get compensated for sharing it, for transferring it. You can also archive leads, delete leads. You can also add tasks. So if you set somebody up on a property alert today, and you want to remind yourself that a week from now, you want to take a look and see how that property alert is performing, you can simply click on add a task and remind yourself to do that. Okay. If you recall, when we set up our profile, we instructed kvCore from our profile when we wanted to receive a daily email reminder, right? So if you wanted to receive it 8 o'clock in the morning, if you wanted to receive it, 12 o'clock noon, whatever works in your schedule, how you're managing your daily to-do list, whatever makes sense. So if you did go in and add a task for, say, next Wednesday, it would show up on Wednesday's email reminder of here's your daily action items, kvCore. Okay. I will tell you there are a couple of things here with Core Concierge and Post-Close Companion. These are special add-ons that you can pay for with kvCore. These are not services that I currently use, but if it was something that you wanted to add to your client experience, those are things that you can pursue. Post-Close Companion has to do with a certain amount of automation and hand-holding that happens after a transaction closes. There is a cost, though. It's not just a standard email campaign. There's a little bit more to it, hence the cost. And same thing with Concierge. It's sort of layering on value. Again, these are not things that I participate in, so I don't want to suggest that I would sort of vote for it or against it. The other thing that I think is super important to know exists when you're in a client profile is these other action items here: search alerts, active campaigns, market reports, Core Present, listing valuation, and then you have seller report. Okay. All of these things here give you the ability to layer on touches with your client, depending on where they are in their journey, whether they're actively looking, whether you just want to set them up on a campaign to automatically reach out to them at least once or twice a month. Maybe there's somebody who's possibly interested in selling, but isn't quite there yet, or possibly interested in buying, but not quite there yet, but would love to just have a pulse on what's happening in a certain market. Market reports are great for that. And I'm just going to show you one or two examples of how these work. Core Present, again, we're going to talk about that in detail in a future training class. And then you also have listing valuation. Listing valuation is going to take the market report to the next level, really targeting more the seller client who would ultimately be listing with you, giving them not just market information, but then starting to tailor it more specifically to what their home valuation might look like. This, in conjunction with a tool like Core Present, can be incredibly powerful in helping you to secure a listing. Okay, but let's take something sort of basic for now in what a lot of buyer clients would need or want, and that's a search alert. So if I wanted to add, right now, there are no setup search alerts for this client contact. So let me click on add. And when I do that, it's going to bring me, notice it brings me over to the alert tab. Okay. Keep in mind that the alerts that you set up need to be reflective of what's happening in the market. So if you're setting up an alert for a client today and you are very specific and put 10 or 15 criteria on that alert so that only properties meeting all 10 or 15 of those criteria are sent to the client, then the client's never going to hear from you, because the likelihood in a super low inventory scenario, it's going to be very difficult to find a perfect match. But if you broaden your search, right, and expand and relax your parameters, then you'll get results and at least get properties in front of the client. And I think that also, of course, helps tailor the conversation and set the expectation with the client too, that, hey, we need to be broader in our mindset, just to know what's out there. Okay. The opposite could be true too. You might have somebody who, in a very heavy inventory market, doesn't want to get bombarded every day or every week with 20 new properties. So maybe you agree to scale back a little bit and push them a little to understand better what their perfect or ideal scenario looks like. So again, search alerts work best when you as the agent have the understanding of what's happening in the market. But the way that you can set it up is you can give it a title. And what's cool about a search alert is you used to only be able to, I think, do 2, and now it's expanded. I think you could do either maybe 3 or 4 different alerts for one person. The value in that is because maybe you have a client that's looking in multiple towns and might want something different in different towns. So maybe if the client were moving to, I'm going to use local towns that I'm aware of. So maybe if they were moving to Morristown, they recognize that their price point would have to be higher, or maybe they can afford less in Morristown versus another town where they might be able to adjust their price point a little bit to reflect changes from one town to another, for maybe a more rural versus suburban market, for example. Maybe somebody's possibly interested in moving into the city, but is also considering, a farm. You can, because you have the ability to set up multiple alerts, you can create criteria that are that vastly different that will send communication and notification to your clients. Okay. It's important when you're here in the profile that you tell the system how frequently you want the client to receive the alert. Okay. If you leave it as a dynamic subject line, it'll reflect whatever the results of the search indicate. Or you can click here to customize and set the subject line yourself. Property updates for Deanna, property updates to Deanna, the latest in, Morristown, whatever the case may be, you have the ability to choose. Frequency is important because, again, depending on the market that you're in, depending on the client's urgency in buying, or even in selling, if they just want to know about new properties that are coming on the market, what their competition would be in the neighborhood, then maybe they want to receive these messages ASAP. So as soon as a new listing is posted and is picked up as a match, the client will get a notification. Maybe ASAP and 3 or 4 times a day ends up being too much, so you scale back to daily or even once a week. You have the ability to set. You also want to go ahead as you move through this section, as you move through this alert section, to enter the criteria, again, that makes sense for the market that you're in. So either expanding or contracting. The thing that you don't want to do is to create a property alert that delivers 0 results. That's what's super important. And that's why, going back to what we were talking about before, when you create a new alert, I encourage you to go ahead and set up a task also for, say, 1 week or 2 weeks out to evaluate the performance of that property alert, to make sure there are results being generated, make sure the client is receiving them. Okay. So you have the ability here, you just click into the field and you can identify. So for example, if I wanted to find properties in Medford, I can simply click on Medford and I can either search by city, by area, or by neighborhood. I find you get the best results with your property searches when you select every city qualification as opposed to a neighborhood or a town qualification. Okay, for an area too. I think city ties most cleanly back to the MLS feed. And so I recommend that you only choose items labeled city. Okay, but you could simply, so if I clicked on Medford and clicked on city, and it's going to go ahead and add it here to my list, just like we saw in our hashtags. Now, I could add a second city, but understand that all the other criteria will apply to every city that I add to this list. So if I specifically need a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, or a house with a pool, it can be in different towns, but all that other criteria is going to apply equally, right? Listings, what type of listings to send. What's really cool about this is that you don't have to think about what the labels are to choose. If you just stick your cursor into a lot of these fields, the options, scroll down options will be made available to you. So if somebody's interested only in single family, maybe only in condos and townhomes, you can make multiple selections. You just click from the scroll range, and with each one that you click on, so let's say here I clicked on condos, then I also wanted townhouses. Whoops, I could simply pick both, and it'll include both. Okay. Price range, you just click in and enter the information, just like you would with a standard MLS search. Beds will give you a drop down. You'll notice with the carrots, baths, half baths. You can enter minimum and maximum square feet. What's cool about all of these is that you don't have to enter a value for every single field. And I encourage you not to, especially where we're at with the current market. Have the conversation with your client, sort of what are your must-haves, what are your like-to-haves, and maybe your alert starts first zoning in on the must-haves and pulling in everything that may or may not be attainable in the would like to haves. Okay. So if a certain criteria doesn't matter, isn't an absolute deal breaker or deal maker, then skip over that section to give yourself the greatest chance to get results. If beds is like a hard and fast, I need at least 4 bedrooms, then make sure that you select that. Okay. Then there's some other cool things that you can choose from as you scroll further down. Once you get past sort of the most obvious selections for a property search, if somebody absolutely needs 3-car garage, for example, or maybe you want to add, they want a golf course or a pool, you have the ability to choose from a whole number of additional preferences. For example, here's golf course and pool, but then you also have the ability to fully customize and add an additional keyword. You can click here in the drop down, and if I just start typing, let's say, I'm trying to think of something that's here in the list. I'm testing my memory here for a second. Maybe if I did it over here. Oh, there we go. If you type in keywords, so in terms of uniqueness, even going beyond those other criteria, you have the ability, let's say with zoning, and you can enter additional words that have to do with zoning and click on add keyword. Okay, so you can really get pretty granular with this. But again, that's probably something I would shy away from, being too granular. Otherwise, the property alert will do absolutely nothing. You won't really enjoy the muscle at all. Once you come up with the alert, you have the option to set the alert or to save and send. Set the alert is just going to put it in place. Save and send is actually going to process the alert and save it to the client, but also run it currently. And if any results, if any properties meet this criteria, they will be sent to the client. Okay. Once you've set up the alert, so let's say I save the alert here. Once I set up the alert, remember that before we set this up, when we came into this tab, there were no alerts here. Now you can see that I have a tile showing me that one alert is indeed set up. It's telling me Medford 4 bedrooms. Remember, I noted condo and townhouse, and once weekly. I can always go back and edit the parameters of the search. But look what it's telling me is not only that the search is set up and toggled to on so that it's active, but it's also telling me that I do have results that meet this criteria already. I have the ability here as the agent to click on those results right here from within kvCore to see the detail of this property get some additional information. It'll create a link about this property, and it'll tell me if there are any open houses and give me the list agent's contact information. Okay. So if I'm sending these alerts and my client says, I really love 17 Roberta Way, can I go see it? You don't have to go, oh my gosh, let me hop into the MLS, find this property and pull up the agent information. You can simply go into kvCore, whether it's, on the mobile app, whether it's, on your laptop or tablet, pull up, log into your profile, pull up that client record, and simply click on the property that's already there. You don't have to get the address or anything, as long as, you remember, oh, they said 17 Roberta. So let me go in, click on 17 Roberta and get that appointment scheduled. Okay. If you had questions, you could reach right out to the agent. If you did need to go ahead and schedule, say through showing time or something, then obviously your next step is to head into the MLS. But at least from a client standpoint, remember, what you don't want to have happen is the client reaches out and says, hey, I really want to go see 17 Roberta. And you say, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So this helps you stay in tune with the information that's being sent to the client so you can react to it when they find something that they like. The other thing too is that if you're not seeing results, if you're coming in a week from now and following up on your task, on your to-do item, and you're like, geez, this alert is not producing results that I'm happy with, then you go in and modify the criteria. That's where you edit it. Okay. So property alert is super powerful tool that you definitely, as you build your database, want to take advantage of. It gets you in front of the client and funneling information to them way faster and more efficiently than if you did this all manually yourself. The other thing that I really like about it is that I know that there are several MLSs that offer the same functionality, but then you're managing things in different places, right? So you have a piece of the client's journey in the MLS, then you have a piece of it here, you have a piece of it in your email. The goal is to try to house as much as you can in one place so that you can document the full experience with the client and also help to give you your action list, your to-do list with that client in the future. Okay. The other thing, same thing like with a market report. That's the only other one I'll just maybe show you real quick is if you click on the market report, you can simply identify your location. So maybe this person is really interested in learning as much as they can about Medford. Again, I encourage city. So you can select on Medford. You can opt to toggle this on to use the geographical area rather than the MLS. But again, I think the MLS tie is what gives you the best results. And then you can simply click on add. Okay. If I wanted to, I can go ahead and click send now, or I can click into the market report and update my criteria. Send now is, I think, something that, remember in the beginning when I said everybody should create a dummy profile, right? If you have another email address in your house that maybe you only use for online shopping or personal items, or maybe you create just a free dummy account with Gmail or something, but you create a profile in kvCore so that you can test out some of these things. You want to see what a market report looks like from the consumer's lens before you start sending out market reports across your database. Okay, so I encourage you to do that and test it out and see what you like. I have gotten feedback. Some agents really like the market reports. Some do not. Some prefer to really more sort of custom tailor the conversation and don't necessarily, they kind of feel like a market report might be a lot like the Zillow's estimates, that it sort of pigeonholes them where they want to be able to provide their personal and unique expertise. It's really a matter of personal preference. But the most important thing is don't just start sending off alerts or market reports or listing valuations for that matter, blind. Okay. And notice that everything that I did when I added a market report or unsubscribed a market report, updated in the client journey. And then on the right-hand side, whereas before we saw no alerts, now we can even see here from our main profile page, we can see that one alert is active. If client's going on vacation or is going to be out of town, maybe they have to go abroad for a month for work, you do have the ability to turn off the alert without deleting it, which is, I think, a cool option too. Okay. The other thing, you can go into the profile details and take a look at a little bit more of a granular level about your client. But to be honest with you, where I spend all my time in my client database is in the timeline and on the alerts. These other, you can look at files. You can leverage kvCore as sort of a digital file database, if you will. You can also track your transaction and look at your tasks assigned to this particular client, all from these different tabs. But for me personally, where I find the greatest muscle is in timeline and alerts. Okay. If there are no questions about how to look at a specific client, then what I just want to spend a few minutes talking about is how you get started. If you have no people in your database, then the thing that you want to commit to today is let me get started. And the way that you get started is by taking this template, which I can email to you if you're interested in receiving it. You can also always get a copy of the template directly from kvCore. And right before we conclude, I'll show you how to get that. The best thing you can do for yourself is get started building your database. A lot of times we'll talk to people and say, come up with your first 100. But maybe for some people, 100 feels really daunting. Then come up with something that you can take action on. So maybe you come up with your first 20, 25, maybe your first 50. Maybe this week you're just going to concentrate on everybody that you know from PTA. Next week, you're going to concentrate on everybody that you know from, church. But the idea is the most important thing as you build out your database is name all those people, identify who those people are, and then at a minimum, in order for kvCore to accept that contact into your database, you must have an email address or a phone number. Does not have to be both, but you need at least one or the other. Otherwise, if you try to upload 100 people and 99 of them don't have one of those two things, you're going to have only one person actually successfully upload. Okay, so that's kind of a waste of time for you. So let me just go through real quick. If you are receiving the template from me rather than directly from kvCore, I actually put in like a sample line to show you how each field has to be entered. So obviously first name, last name, pretty straightforward. We all know email formatting. Remember status. We looked at those options where you have these 8 to choose from, and it has to be one of these 8. So what you may even want to do is just take a quick snapshot of this, just remind yourself of what those options are, maybe jot them down. Because when you come over here to the actual spreadsheet, if you enter anything other than one of those 8, it will not pull into your database, to your contact file. Okay. Deal type. Remember, those are the classifications that we had 5, but you can choose 1, 2, or all 5 of these if they all apply. You just want to make sure that you're separating them with that type. So what would that look like? Just like what I have here. If somebody was both a seller and a buyer with me, I can name both, separate them by that type, no spaces. Okay. Same thing with hashtags. I can keep going here with hashtags. I just separate them all with a pipe, and might look something like this. And I can continue to go on and on. Maybe I even do PTA. Okay. So as many hashtags as you like. Don't do so many that you can't keep up with the system. The system doesn't make sense to you, but don't do so few that you can't really leverage and create communications for different segments of your people based on the things that they have in common. If you have a ton of people, maybe you have a particular hobby, like maybe you love cars and you are in close contact with a huge, close-knit car community. Maybe you're part of the Elks. Maybe you are in a women's group or a Bible study. Those are all potential hashtags where you might want to sort of customize a unique level of communication to reach out to those people specifically. Okay. Cell phone number is just going to get entered as straight digits, no dashes, no spaces, no parentheses, just the straight 10 digits. Birthday, You'll see here, month, day, year. You don't need to add zeros for a single digit days or months. Okay. And you do need a 4-digit year for your birthdays. You don't have to enter all of this information. So you don't need birthdays. Just again, the must have is either an email or a cell phone in order for the record to take. If you haven't a mailing address, you can add it. You don't need to. One thing that I will caution you on is the primary zip code. For a lot of us, particularly in South Jersey with the leading 0, do not lose the leading 0 if you are going to be leveraging mailing address. Make sure that you're entering the 0 and saving the format and it doesn't get lost and turn into what looks like a 4-digit zip code. You can track personal referral if you wish, don't have to. These are the other 3 things that are super important when you're adding new contacts through the template, through the upload process. You're going to get these opt-in features: email opt-in, text opt-in, phone opt-in. If you don't enter a value here, later when you add this contact to your database, remember when we did our mass email, it said that, 25 of the or 30 people from the list are not going to receive this message because they're not opted in. That's where this gets fixed here. Okay. When you're entering new people in your database for the first time, for each of these 3 categories, you want to mark it as true. Unless you know for sure that they do not want to receive text messages or emails or phone calls, in which case you would enter false for any one or all of these. Maybe they're willing to receive email. That would be true, but not text. So you would simply come in and type false here in the database record. Okay. The other thing that you can do if you're working with a specific client who verbally tells you, please don't text me anymore, you can go into that client's contact list. Remember, the right-hand side is going to be all your action items for that person. You have the ability to click here on more actions and unsubscribe them from emails, unsubscribe them from texts. Now, right now for this contact, you can't see unsubscribe from text because I don't have a phone number added. Okay. If I had a phone number added, I could go ahead then and subscribe them to text. And once they're subscribed, then I would see the option to unsubscribe them from texts. Okay. So when you are completing this database, you can do as many uploads as you want. So if you can commit to, 20 or 25 contacts at a time, do it. It's a place to get started. Okay. Then what you can do is when you're ready for your first upload, you're going to come into kvCore and you're going to go up here from your profile and you can click on, or actually there's a better way to do it. Let's do over here to lead engine and all lead engine tools. Okay. When you click on all lead engine tools, it'll take you to this sort of sub dashboard. And this is where you're going to do bulk lead import. Okay. You can work on that database platform in Google Sheets. You can work on it in Excel. But when you're ready to come here and upload it, sort of at the last minute, you have to take that database, that group, that information, and you have to save it as a CSV file. So you can't upload it as a Google Sheet. I forget what the extension is in Google Sheets. And you can't use the XLS or XLSX that comes up in Excel. It has to be a CSV. Okay. When you click here under bulk lead import, it's really pretty cool. If you like technology and this doesn't intimidate you, then give it a shot and go for it yourself. You can go ahead and get started and manage the import process. If you are like, hell no, I would much rather have kvCore handle this for me, you can absolutely do that too. And you just click here to submit a file. If you submit the file to kvCore, it usually takes 2 or 3 days for them to turn it around and get those leads imported for you. Again, if you start from the template, a template that you either got from kvCore or the one that you got from me, the value in that is that the headings are already formatted to talk very clearly and cleanly to kvCore so that the fields match up nice and smooth. Don't create any exceptions that you have to process. But the way that you can do it yourself is you can simply click Get Started. You can browse your files. Remember, it's got to be a CSV. If it's not in CSV format, this is where you're going to stay, and you'll be stuck trying to figure out why it's not moving forward for you. What'll happen once you're able to move forward and the file's not too large, and if the file is too large, it's either going to be because you have like 10,000 people or because there's a problem with the formatting, which more often than not is the case. If it says that your file is too large, then what I recommend is to go back and just sort of copy and paste just the data pieces. Sometimes with CSVs, it'll pull in the whole big spreadsheet, even all those blank fields, rows, columns that you aren't using. So if you just sort of copy and paste where your data is, paste it into a new file and save it as a CSV, that almost always resolves the issue. Okay. But what'll happen is once you move through this upload, if you're handling it yourself, kvCore is going to look at each of these field labels here up at the top in yellow, and it's going to match it up to the field label in kvCore. Because this format that you're looking at came from kvCore, again, it helps that process to work very smoothly. If there are sort of any mismatches, like maybe, I don't know, let's say I called source something different. Maybe I called it notes, and in kvCore, it's referenced as source, or maybe vice versa. Maybe I'm referencing it as source, but there's no clear source field in kvCore. kvCore will tell me as it's analyzing my file that, hey, I don't know where to match this field. And it'll give you the list, and you can simply tell it, okay, everywhere that you see a source on my spreadsheet, I want you to drop it into the notes field in kvCore. Okay. Then once you go through that process, you literally, click on one or two more buttons to hit to submit and get your data to upload. I can tell you if you're working with, doing say 20 to 50 contacts at a time, you should see those reflected pretty quickly, that once you get notification that your upload was successful, you should be able to go back to your kvCore dashboard, go back to your CRM, just hit your refresh button. So a lot of times it does require sort of a web and internet refresh, but then you should see all those clients there. If it's say 100 or more, even 200, 300, and so forth, give that a little bit of time. Sometimes you won't see those contacts right away. Okay. But the idea here is to get started, and being able to start putting your contacts into the database is what's going to allow the next steps of the process to make sense. Being able to leverage campaigns so that you're staying in touch with people even when they're not actively in the market to buy or sell. Being able to use a tool like Core Present for your CMA builds. Having these people in your databases or in your kvCore database is a really important first step. So homework today is to get started, get going, make it work for you, and get your people, get them out of your phone, get the business cards out of your desk drawer or out of your junk drawer, and start getting them loaded into the database. This will allow us to move forward with our next training, where we're going to spend time talking about campaigns and how to use them. The next 2 weeks, actually, I think Core Present, honestly, is just like one of my favorite things in kvCore, but campaigns and really understanding them, that's sort of like, okay, now we're really getting the hang of how an automated CRM is going to work for us. Right now, we've really been concentrating on how to get it ready, get our data in there, get our info and our people in there. But now we're going to leverage the muscle of these tools. So hopefully you'll get started. If you have any questions, feel free at any time. You can always reach out to me. You can go back. We'll have the replay posted on the YouTube channel, probably before the end of the day today, maybe by tomorrow morning for sure. So if you need to go back and review any of this as you build out your database, go for it. And again, start with 10 or 20. It's not about the numbers. It's about just taking action. Okay. All right, great. Thank you, everybody. Hope you found something useful out of this, and you're going to go get started on building your database. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week for campaigns.